Joining me now is Frazer Bourchier. He is the President and CEO at Mandalay Resources, and we have Nic Earner, Managing Director at Alkane Resources. Gentlemen, great to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Great to see you too.
So Frazer, you sat right here a few months ago and you said, we're looking around for M&A, and lo and behold, here is this merger of equals between Mandalay and between Alkane as well. So what was the thinking? Why is this the right fit?
Look, I mean, collectively, we struck pay dirt. We're happy. Stars aligned, exactly what we were looking for. Merger of equals, same valuation. Together, we have size, scale, liquidity, tier one jurisdictions, further platform for growth, more capital scales, relevance now. So it's really exciting, and this has taken a lot of work. There's been a number of things we've looked at. And this is the one that made sense. And socially, we worked out the issues on board and executive. It was transactable. We moved into exclusivity, and we were really excited to be able to announce the deal.
And Nic, on your part, why is this the right deal at the right time for Alkane?
Look, Frazer's caught obviously the key points, but I think for both of our companies, we were both seen either on the TSX or the ASX as subscale. And so this really lifts us into the next level of, we would call it, medium tier in Australia, but of course by US standards, that's still very small.
Right.
Yeah, and so what that does is that enables so many more things to happen off certainly the balance sheets and liquidity that come from being a larger scale. And really it's, each of those things allows us to pursue our organic at mine site and inorganic growth opportunities off a much more strengthened position that we otherwise would not have had if we'd both stayed as the same companies.
And so when the deal closes, Mandalay shareholders will own about 55% of the new entity, Alkane about 45%. You're combining the management teams, you're going out of the board. Can you tell us more about the operational structure and how it's going to work?
Sure. So yeah, it'll be a 55-45 pro forma, as you state, Mandalay shareholders and current Alkane shareholders. And by the way, I want to emphasize we will remain dual listed. We expect it'll trade healthily on both the TSX and the ASX, even if it all trades under the ticker symbol of Alkane. Board structure will be 3 board members that represent Mandalay. That's myself going on, the current chair, Brad Mills, and also my predecessor, who's also on the board, Dominic Duffy. And then we will have 2 from Alkane, Nic being the executive director, and then their current chair is the non-exec, Ian Gandel. And then we'll have a new independent board member, very qualified, currently on the board of Barrick. So that is the board structure. The executive structure, probably more appropriate. I let Nic speak to that, as he'll run the executive team as the managing director, as termed in Australia. President CEO is termed in North America. 2 of my executives will join his team, but I'll let Nic speak to that.
Right, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so won't add a lot to that. Ryan and Chris, the COO and head of exploration for Mandalay, will join our existing management team. Each of our sites, we're very similar in the way we operate, in that each site is empowered to act on its own part, and you have a corporate structure that manages more of the strategy and long-term things. And so with Ryan and Chris coming over, we automatically have the oversight that sits across Bjorkdal and Costerfield. We already have the oversight that sits over our gold mine at Tomingley. So very few change. If you're an operator on the ground, apart from some new corporate faces blowing in every now and again on a routine basis, and audit and oversight, that's all you'd see, yes.
Okay, and Nic, you touched on how this creates more scale, liquidity, the possible inclusion of the stock in certain indices. Can you flesh that out for us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So pro forma market cap at the time of transaction, and obviously in this very volatile gold environment that's shifting and moving, was about between 1 and 1.1 billion Australian dollars. So, just a bit under a billion Canadian dollars. And liquidity, Alkane's liquidity had traditionally been around $700,000 Australian. Mandalay's had traditionally been around sort of 300,000 or 400,000, but then it had lifted up recently, since sort of Christmas, to around $2 million odd dollars. Both of our liquidities have already gone up much higher. And that's really important for, if you think of a fund trying to take a $5-10 million position, then they're just not going to do that without liquidity. So that will happen. But more importantly, The ASX 300 kicks in around sort of $650, $700 million. There's a lot of index buying. Listeners in Canada may not be familiar with the Australian superannuation industry. There is a lot of index buying that occurs, and ASX 300 is a typical one of that. It's sort of the lowest end of the ASX, and the ASX 300, 200, 150. We'd very much like to, of course, push into the 200. So a lot of index buying that we would expect there. And then also GDXJ. So Alkane's already on the GDXJ, but of course, the doubling of market cap, you should expect that buying. They rebalance, quarterly, depending on which of those indexes. What does that do? Well, one, it should drive a re-rate, just to help drive in the balance of other peers at that production scale. Because if people do some research and they say, okay, what are Australian listed stocks and even Canadian listed stocks doing 180 odd thousand ounces a year? What's their market cap? To a company, they're well north of $1.1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And you think of all the strength and things you can do off that. It makes future M&A easier. It makes allocation of capital easier. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. We're very excited. This is the big driver for both companies.
Right. And Frazer, this is one of many deals recently. We can think of Lumina, for example, that just got taken out after many years. Ross Beatty's company that he started. So how do you think this fits into the current landscape with gold near all-time highs?
Look, so we've always felt strongly for capital markets relevancy, for access to a number of indexes, that there needs to be consolidation within the landscape of what we call the mid to juniors. Arguably, at one point, we were each considered microcap. So I think this is really important. I mean, it adds both synergies, scale. These other deals you speak to, they're not as many, across the ocean deals as what we've done here, but each of us are used to that in terms of geographic diversity. So, I think it makes a lot of sense. The high gold price is certainly fortuitous, but we've been working on this back when gold was 2,000 US an ounce, even if it sits north of 3,000 now. So that's fortuitous in terms of the timing, but it doesn't change the relevancy of the story. And a merger of equals, both boats have floated up with the same tide, and now we have further reach with this combined size and scale. So it's great, and we'd love to see more of it. We worked out the social issues. It was transactable, and we hit the go button, and we're pleased that it's going to work and close soon.
Nic, one thing that isn't talked about as much in this deal, and correct me if I'm wrong, but both companies have antimony reserves, am I right? Or
no,
just
so
Mandalay?
So just Mandalay.
Okay.
Costerfield in Victoria has antimony, yes.
So how significant is having that?
On the pro forma company, circa 10, bit over 10% at current prices will be the revenue coming from antimony. So it's relevant, right? But it's not, the entire mission. If we look at future transactions, future M&A that we'd like to do as a business, we'll be leading with gold. We won't be leading with antimony.
Mm-hmm.
Frazer and Mandalay have done a great job of being, they are the Western producer of antimony. And obviously Western production is much, much smaller than Russia stands and China. And so, yes, we'll get attention. I think on the ASX, this is the only way you can invest in an antimony production company. So I think we'll get some eyeballs because of that. But I do think what I'll get is a lot more media attention and scrutiny than actual revenue changes. But hey, we won't sneeze at the current price. It's fantastic.
And as Nic stated, the pro forma company will still be the largest producer of antimony, a critical mineral, one of the top 14 listed by the Critical Minerals Institute in the world. So it's great to have. It comes along for the ride. It adds a lot of cash. It gets a lot of attention. But we are a precious metal producer.
Let's get you both to comment on the market reaction so far to the deal and what kind of feedback you're getting from investors. Nic, do you want to get Frazer?
No, sure, go ahead, Nic. Yeah.
So Frazer and I have been marketing together since the day the deal was announced. So we did a lot of stuff through Australia and calls into Hong Kong, and then we're here in Toronto, and we have further stuff, New York, London, rolling out. We've had no negative reaction at all. We've had some queries, like how will I be, what will I be paying tax, and how you can allocate capital. Very, very reasonable questions, but very positive. People, certainly all the meetings that we had with a lot of funds, you know, north of 40 meetings so far, been very, very positive, supportive. They get the rationale. They do ask, why isn't there more of this? And that'll be a whole nother podcast. But
Yeah.
it's been very positive.
It's
We've been
been-
really
yeah.
gratified.
Okay.
And I'd also add, I think the muted to positive response initially, which has turned into positive to very positive, was partly a lack of knowledge of each other's companies. And the more people understand the story, the more they're excited. They think this makes sense. Some didn't see it coming, but they understand the entire thesis. So they're quite, we've been quite happy, but we want to continue to share the story and expand upon it more.
Yeah, we were both surprised that people were surprised, given how much both of us have talked publicly about the desire to do a mutually value accretive deal.
Exactly. I know for a fact that Frazer was very open about it, and I love that when the CEOs are like that. Yeah, we're looking for deals, sure. And don't play it close to the vest too much. And lastly, let's sum it up from both of you. You said you've had more than 40 meetings, so I'm sure you've honed your elevator pitch. So maybe you start with you, Nic. Summarize your thoughts and what investors are getting here with this combination.
So they're getting a much larger scale company that is relevant on both the ASX and TSX in the gold sector, that's very well positioned for growth and aligned for that, that's got a very strong balance sheet and has also inorganic and organic. Both of these sites can continue to grow and extend their mine lives. But perhaps, Frazer, more specifically. on
Yeah,
numbers.
specifically, look, 3 gold mines producing assets. It will be 180,000 ounces equivalent per year. We will have north of 100 million net cash. If you clean up the debt, net cash, we will have generate over 200 million, and I talk all US dollars, 200 million in free cash flow per year. Great balance sheet, safe jurisdictions. This is one of many steps that we see going forward. So we're really excited about this. The numbers just stack up to be quite substantial.
All right, very interesting. Thanks for coming in, gentlemen. We'll be following for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Frazer Bourchier and Nic Earner from Alkane Resources.